Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a fantastic Wednesday. I apologize for missing the past couple Wednesdays. Um, I've been super busy with, the gym and with college applications because I'm going to college, which is super exciting. And I pray that everything goes smooth with the applications. And so that's a little bit of what I'm working on. But I want to go into the story of Daniel. I want to start with the first sentence of Daniel, and it says, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and surrounded it with his army. So this kind of sets the stage for where we're at. Um, Nebuchadnezzar is the king of Babylon, and he came into Jerusalem. And then we skip to chapter 3 in Daniel. It says, Now King Nebuchadnezzar had a gold statue made. The statue was 90 feet high and 9 feet wide. He set up the statue on the plain of Dura in the area of Babylon. Then the king called the important leaders, the governors, assistant governors, captain of the soldiers, people who advised the king, keepers of the treasury, judges, rulers, and all other officers in the kingdom. He wanted for the statue he had set up. So they all came for this very special service. So this statue that Nebuchadnezzar's building is, really important to Nebuchadnezzar, really important to the community and all these high leaders. So this statue's really looked up upon. And they stood in front of the statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the man who made announcements for the king spoke in a loud voice. He said, People, nations, and men of every language, this is what you are commanded to do. You will hear the sound of the horns, flutes, lyres, zithers, harps, pipes, and all other musical instruments. When this happens, you must bow down and worship the gold statue. This is the one King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Everyone must bow down and worship this gold statue. Anyone who doesn't will be quickly thrown into a blazing furnace. So this gold statue has been idolized so much to the point of where they have all of these people bowing down to this statue. Now, people, nations, and men who spoke every language were there, and they heard the sound of the horns, flutes, lyres, zithers, pipes, and all other musical instruments. So they bowed down and worshipped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then some Babylonians came up to the king. They began speaking against the men of Judah. They said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, Our king, live forever. Our king, you gave a command. You said that everyone would hear the horns, lyres, zithers, harps, pipes, and all other musical instruments. Then they would have to bow down and worship the gold statue. Anyone who wouldn't do this was to be thrown in a blazing furnace. So this is essentially summing up what's happening here. And anyone who wouldn't do, or our king, there are some men of Judah who did not pay attention to your order. Now, so there's these three men, and their names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they do not serve your gods, and they do not worship the gold statue you have set up. Now, these three men are also important leaders in this time frame, and they're setting the tone for people that follow them as well as leaders. So for them not to follow Nebuchadnezzar and his commandment of bowing down to the statue, Nebuchadnezzar becomes very angry, and he called for these three men. So those men were brought to the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, is it true that you do not serve my gods? So this is where conflict starts to arise. And it is true. And is it true that you did not worship the gold statue I have set up? Now you will hear the sound of the horns, flutes, lyres, zithers, harps, and other musical instruments, and you must be ready to bow down and worship the statue I made. That will be good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown quickly into the blazing fire. Then no God will be able to save you from my power. And this is crazy because, Nebuchadnezzar's saying, it's either you do what I say or you're going to die. And these three men answer the king, and they said, Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves to you. You can throw us into the blazing furnace. The God we serve is able to save us from the furnace and your power. And if he does this, it is good. But even if God does not save us, we want you, our king, to know this. We will not serve your gods. We will not worship the gold statue you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious. So even to the point of, these three men knowing their God is powerful, but even to the point where, God does everything for a reason. And if he doesn't save us from this burning furnace, we're still not going to do what you say, Nebuchadnezzar, because we don't believe that that gold statue has any power over us. And so Nebuchadnezzar was furious with these three men. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual, so burning fire. Then he commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up these three men. The king told the soldiers to throw them into the blazing furnace. So the three men were tied up and thrown into the blazing furnace. They were still wearing the robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothing. The king was very angry when he gave the command, and the furnace was made very hot. The fire was so hot the flames killed the strong soldiers who took the three men there. Firmly tied, the three men fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar, and this is when everything starts to shift and the power is finally revealed. And it says, he was very surprised and jumped to his feet. He asked the men who advised him, "Didn't we tie up those three men? Didn't we throw them into the fire?" That's what he questioned. And the soldiers answered, "Yes, our king." The king said, "Look, I see 4 men. They're walking around in the fire." Now, take note that, 3 men were tied up and thrown into the fire, and he sees 4 in here. That's going to mean something here in a second. He says, "They are walking around in the fire. They are not tied up, and they are not burned. The 4th man looks like a son of the gods." And that's powerful because in this situation, these 3 men had so much faith in God, so much faith in God's power that they didn't give up when they were faced with death, even they didn't give up. And, even as a metaphor, even as we're going through our daily lives and, what we might not be faced with a burning fire, but we may be faced with, a family member who's struggling or us ourselves that are struggling with, mental illness, diseases and just all these different things that people can face. We're so delicate, so many different things can happen to us. But to be faced with that and still have faith, my God's more powerful than this burning furnace. My God's more powerful than, these circumstances that I'm going through or these, fires or, adversaries that I'm facing. So to go back into this story, it says, Nebuchadnezzar went to the opening of the blazing furnace. He shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out. Servants of the Most High God, come here." So this is when, Nebuchadnezzar finally, he's starting to realize something's different here. And, anyone would realize that when they see men walking around in a burning furnace. He says, "Servants of the Most High God." Only a high God can do this. Only the Most High God can do something this powerful. And it says, so the 3 men came out of the fire. When they came out, the princes, assistant governors, and royal advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies. Their hair was not burned, their robes were not burned, and they didn't even smell like smoke. So they were protected as if they weren't even in a fire. That's how powerful God is. That's how powerful having faith is. And it says, then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Their God has sent his angel and saved his servants from the fire." These 3 men trusted their God. They refused to obey my command, and they were willing to die rather than to serve or worship any other God than their own. That's the faith that God wants us to have. That's the faith that God, trusts that we're going to have in him because he's done things like saving people who have faith in him from burning furnaces. This actually happened in the past. This is a true biblical story. This is a true historical document that has lasted even more than other historical documents in the world. So this is true, and this is happening, and this happened, and this shows, God is powerful if you have faith in that power. And they had radical faith. They stood against death, which is hard for any of us to do, and still have faith. Many people give up on faith because of, hard circumstances. But in order to, go through something and still have faith in God, that's powerful. And that's persevering. And so it says, these three men trusted God. So I now make this law. This is Nebuchadnezzar speaking again. The people of any nation or languages must not say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Anyone who does will be torn apart. So now Nebuchadnezzar is on the opposite spectrum. This same Nebuchadnezzar who, minutes before sent these three men into a fire because they didn't want to bow down to this gold statue, set the furnace 7 times higher. This same Nebuchadnezzar says anyone who goes against their God, anyone, who says bad against their God will be torn apart. Now Nebuchadnezzar's on the other spectrum, on the good spectrum. And it's life-changing. You through your faith are going to change other people. Nebuchadnezzar is very powerful. He's the king, and in order to change, a king's mind who has a very proud of his position, in which he should be, in order to change a mind like his, you have to have faith in something even higher than the king, which is God himself. And that's what these three men did, and they changed his mind, and they changed, his perspective. And now Nebuchadnezzar is fighting for these three men and the Most High God, and that is powerful. And then it says, and his house will be turned. Oh yeah. So it goes even more. If you go against this God that these three men stand for, you'll be torn apart, and your house will be turned into a pile of stones. No other God can save his people like this. So, now there's, 2 punishments on you if you go against this God. And he says, I haven't ever seen a power this powerful. And no other God saves or cares enough about his people like this God does. Like the God these three men worshipped and stood for does. So then it says, the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the area of Babylon. So not only did Nebuchadnezzar change his mind on, standing either for the statue or standing for the God that these three men believe in, but he promoted these three men who stood so radically in their faith, because that's a radical faith. And it reminded me of the 2 stories, which, of course, the most famous story, the story that us Christians live by and, will believe in forever, which is Jesus died on the cross for our sins. And for whoever shall believe in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And Jesus went through torture. Jesus, got denied by his own. Jesus had 12 disciples and he got denied as if they didn't even know him, because one of his disciples was facing death and he denied Jesus because of it. And that showed that he didn't have that faith. But Jesus, even through all the pains and struggles that he went through, he still went to the cross, and he still carried that cross on his back, because he knew that there was a purpose greater than the pain that he had to suffer for us. God sent him on one mission, and that was to save everybody that believes in him, that believes that he actually came down and did that. So that's powerful. And then we also have Job. Job is a story that, has developed in my life. And it's just a really powerful story. And it's this man who also had radical faith in God and true faith in God. And he started with everything. He started with a bunch of kids and, a bunch of crops and farm animals and a wife. And, he was living well. He had wealth. He had food on the table every night. There was no problems with Job's life. There was no problem at all. And he had a solid foundation of faith with God. But God tested his faith. God tested him and, um, took away everything, starting with the most valuable to him, which was his children. And he took them away, and he, he killed them. The Job's kids died, and all his crops were destroyed. All his animals, were led astray and gone from him as well. And then even to that, it started coming to himself. So he started getting these big rashes and big, welts on his body. And there was a temptation from his wife. And his wife says, Job, why are you still believing in God after everything has been taken away from you? And after, these scars and whelps are on your body, why are you still having, faith in God? Just give up. Just give up on him. And that's so easy to do, is just give up on everything and just say, you know what, I don't believe in anything. I don't want to believe in anything because all this bad is happening upon me. It's called self-pity. We'll have self-pity on ourselves so that other people, can try to come help us. But nothing is more strong, nothing is more powerful or stronger than the power of God. And that's what we have to believe through our struggles. That's what we have to believe through everything that we're going through. And so Job told his wife, you're talking like a foolish woman. You know who God is. And, after that, after, all this that Job went through, uh, God finally came back in. And he said, Job, you had faith in me. After everything was taken away, after everything, after your body was destroyed, you still had faith in me. And you are a loyal son. You are a loyal servant of me. And so God rewards Job with double of everything that he had, double kids, double crops, double farm animals, a bigger house, and, great health. And it truly shows that if you have faith and you know that God is more powerful than anything in this world, and you have true faith in that God will come around even after everything that you've been through. He's going to come through. And it may seem like he's not going to, but he will, and he always does if you have faith in that. And if you're praying to him and, you believe in his power. And that is what true faith is, my friends. Even facing death, even facing, the worst of the worst, we still have to have faith in God, true faith in God, that he's going to change us. He's going to change, our hearts and make us better servants of him. And the main goal of this life is to, build us up as children of God. Make us better for his kingdom, because his kingdom's magnificent and glorious. And if we understand that now before we get there, we're going to be so much better off. And that's what I have to say tonight. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. Please comment below, or like the video if you liked it, please. And thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful night. Thank you.